The quiet streets of Phoenix, Arizona once concealed a tale so extraordinary it defied all understanding of cause and consequence. Within a devout Muslim community, beneath an outward display of piety and grace, lay hidden sins of unimaginable depth. These were transgressions capable of twisting the very fabric of existence, deeds that had been carefully buried yet refused to remain interred. What transpired when the unatoned actions of a distant past manifested in flesh and blood? A child was born, but its tiny form presented a nightmarish fusion of human and something profoundly alien. Doctors were frozen in sheer terror. The once serene neighborhood spiraled into utter panic. This was not merely an unusual birth. It was a profound descent into the secrets of the human soul, a testament to the arduous path of atonement, and a startling revelation of the unexpected mercy that could emerge from the most unlikely circumstances. The events that unfolded after this shocking arrival irrevocably altered lives, demonstrating that even the gravest errors possess the potential to illuminate a path toward redemption. This was a journey no one could have anticipated. In the tranquil Muslim community on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, a woman named Samira Hafiz navigated her days with an air of quiet reverence. At 32, her presence was well established within the local mosque. She was known for her modesty, her devout nature, always impeccably adorned in her niqab, and dedicated to teaching Quranic lessons to young girls. Respect flowed towards her from all corners, and the elder sisters affectionately referred to her as Nuri, a title of endearment, despite her having no children of her own. Her voice was soft, her greetings always punctuated with Assalamu alaikum, and she frequently offered gentle reminders to the youth about the virtues of purity and faith. Yet a profound secret lay buried deep within Samira. Years before, during her younger days in the bustling city of Seattle, a tragic plane crash claimed her parents' lives. Left adrift, she sought employment in a chaotic downtown restaurant. Initially, her life remained innocent, but a gradual, insidious shift began. She found herself ensnared in forbidden relationships, drawn into the very nightlife she had once vehemently condemned. She repeatedly engaged in zina with men who offered fleeting promises of love, delivering nothing but sin in return. Each time pregnancy followed, a wave of panic consumed her. The thought of facing her Muslim community, bearing the weight of such shame, was unbearable. Thus, she clandestinely, unlawfully terminated those pregnancies. She would board a late-night bus, and once the fetus was expelled, she would wrap it, burying it in the desolate corners of the desert, silently praying the relentless winds would erase all traces. This grim ritual occurred once, then again, totaling 5 times. She never confided in anyone. She sought repentance on her prayer mat, performing tauba, yet time and again she relapsed into the same transgressions. To the world, she eventually presented herself as a transformed woman. She donned an abaya, diligently attended Quran classes, and consistently gave charity. However, within the confines of her heart, guilt had solidified into a permanent resident. One fateful night, shortly after disposing of the 5th fetus, a terrifying dream descended upon her. She stood amidst the boundless expanse of the desert, the sky above her a profound, inky black. From beneath the shifting sands, 5 small figures emerged, children coated in dust, their faces devoid of discernible features. They silently pointed towards her, their eyeless gazes fixed. A single whisper pierced the silence. "We were your amana, Mama. Why did you discard us?" Samira jolted awake, drenched in cold sweat. She desperately attempted to dismiss the vision, attributing it to stress, but a profound crack had formed deep within her heart, a fissure she could no longer ignore. A year passed since the harrowing dream, and Samira sought solace in a new chapter. She entered into a marriage with an older man from her community, Jamal Ahmed, a 52-year-old widower who owned a local spice shop. Their union was not born of ardent love, but rather a practical convenience. Jamal, with his established household, required a wife to manage its affairs, while Samira desperately needed to silence the persistent whispers and veiled judgments surrounding her unmarried status. The marriage offered a semblance of normalcy, a path back into the accepted rhythms of community life, a fragile hope for erasing the indelible marks of her past. Soon after the quiet ceremony, Samira discovered she was pregnant once more, This time, however, the familiar wave of panic that had once driven her to desperate acts did not consume her. A different resolve took a root. Late one night, after performing tahajjud prayers, her hands instinctively rested upon her swelling belly. A quiet, determined whisper escaped her lips, a vow to herself and to a higher power. She would raise this child. Despite the lingering echoes of her unworthiness, she clung to the fervent hope that this new life might, perhaps, offer her a route back to divine grace, a tangible step toward true repentance. It was a silent promise, made in the hushed sanctity of her own heart, a desperate plea for a chance at redemption. Yet this pregnancy unfolded unlike any she had experienced before. By the fourth month, unsettling symptoms began to manifest. Recurring fevers, their intensity ebbing and flowing unpredictably, plagued her. Her gums frequently bled, a minor yet persistent discomfort. More disturbingly, her nights were haunted by vivid, disturbing dreams. Faceless children, their forms indistinct, crawled across the scorching desert sand, their unseen eyes fixed ominously upon her womb. A profound unease settled within her as her body underwent a disconcerting transformation. Her stomach no longer moved with the familiar, gentle undulations of a typical pregnancy. Instead, it churned, it rolled unnaturally, as if something distinctly alive and unsettlingly aware resided within her, a presence unlike anything she had ever known. The subtle shifts in Samira's demeanor did not go unnoticed by her watchful neighbors. Her usual cheerful disposition faded, a smile rarely graced her lips. Her eyes, once bright, now seemed perpetually tired, hollowed by an unseen burden. Despite this palpable change, she maintained her outward routine, a testament to her ingrained piety. She continued her regular visits to the mosque, diligently selling her homemade sweets at the community bazaar and reciting du'as alongside the other sisters, an effort to cling to the facade of normalcy and devotion that had defined her public persona. The desert heat felt heavier, the silence deeper as Samira carried her secret burden, now manifest in the unsettling life growing within her. Then came the night of labor, a night that shattered the fragile peace Samira had desperately tried to build. Just before the dawn prayers of Fajr, a guttural scream tore from her throat, echoing through the quiet confines of their kitchen. Jamal, roused from his sleep, rushed to her side, his movements a blur of panic and concern. He fumbled with his phone, dialing the emergency number, his free hand cradling her head as she writhed on the cold tile floor. By the time the paramedic siren wailed in the distance, a midwife neighbor who happened to be awake for tahajjud had already arrived, assisting Samira in a birth that would forever be etched into their memories. What emerged into the world that morning sent a wave of visceral shock through every witness. It was undeniably a baby boy, yet his lower limbs defied all human recognition. Instead of soft, pliable skin, they were covered in hardened, sandy yellow scales, rough to the touch. His toes tapered into sharp, defined claws, and from the base of his tiny spine, a long, segmented tail, disturbingly reminiscent of a scorpion's, curled unnaturally. The midwife gasped, a choked sound of disbelief escaping her lips. One of the paramedics involuntarily recoiled, a whispered, "Subhanallah," barely audible beneath his breath. The newborn's cry was not the typical, innocent wail of an infant. It was a deep, guttural sound, a chilling blend of a baby's distress and an animal's primal growl. Samira looked down at the grotesque sight, her eyes widening in horror, and a piercing scream ripped from her. "That's not my son! That's not my child! Take it away!" Jamal, though visibly stunned, moved with an instinct born of paternal love. He carefully lifted the strange infant, wrapping him tenderly in a prayer shawl, and held him close to his chest. His face was pale, his voice trembling with a mixture of shock and unwavering resolve. He declared, "He's still ours, no matter what he looks like. He's our son." Samira, however, recoiled, turning her face away, her body trembling uncontrollably. A chilling realization dawned upon her. This was no mere deformity, no rare medical condition. This was azab, a divine consequence. The hidden sins of her past had finally taken tangible form. And now, this living manifestation had a name: natal. The ambulance ride to Phoenix Genesis Hospital was cloaked in an unsettling silence, broken only by the newborn's strange guttural cries emanating from Jamal's protective embrace. Samira remained curled in her seat, refusing even a glance at the child, her lips moving in a silent, fervent murmur of duas. At Phoenix Genesis, the doctors, a collective of pediatricians, geneticists, and specialists, had never encountered such a phenomenon. CT scans, X-rays, blood work, every diagnostic test returned baffling, confusing results. The baby's vital signs were remarkably normal, yet his physiology was anything but. His lower limbs were encased in hardened, greenish-yellow scales, almost armor-like, and the tail was undeniably real, complete with vertebrae and muscle structure. No known genetic disorder offered an explanation, no medical syndrome accounted for this. On the fourth day of Samira's self-imposed isolation, Jamal entered her hospital room, carrying Nadil wrapped snugly in a soft white blanket. Samira, startled from her tormented stupor, abruptly sat upright in alarm. She demanded to know why he had brought the infant into her sight. Jamal, his voice gentle yet firm, explained the baby's hunger and his refusal to take a bottle. Samira turned her face away, a visceral rejection evident in her rigid posture, declaring her inability to even look at the child. Jamal calmly countered, reminding her of the child's paternity. He affirmed that no child was born a mistake, posing a profound question about the possibility of divine error. Samira's eyes welled with tears, a choke sound escaping her as she insisted on Jamal's lack of understanding. He then sat on the edge of her bed, carefully holding Nadil, and simply urged her to help him understand. In that moment, a dam broke within Samira. For the very first time, she unburdened herself, revealing the entirety of her past. She recounted her youth in Seattle, the devastating loss of her parents, the descent into forbidden relationships. She spoke of the multiple pregnancies, the hushed bus rides to downtown clinics under the cover of night, the long, solitary hours spent in the desert's desolate corners, burying tiny bodies wrapped in cloth, hoping the shifting sands would erase her transgressions. She recounted the terrifying dreams, the disembodied voices, the haunting images of faceless children. As her confession poured out, raw and agonizing, she fully expected Jamal to rise and walk away, to abandon her to the crushing weight of her revealed sins. But Jamal remained silent, his gaze steady. He gently placed Nadil onto her lap, then rose to his feet. He acknowledged the truth she had finally offered him, then simply instructed her to give the child a chance. With that, he quietly exited the room, leaving Samira frozen, the strange infant resting upon her lap. The baby was asleep, his small chest rising and falling with a peaceful rhythm, his segmented tail twitching imperceptibly beneath the soft blanket. She stared at him, her gaze lingering on his unusual scaled feet, then moving to his hands, which appeared entirely human, and finally to his serene, slumbering face. In that moment, he did not appear monstrous. He simply looked tired, worn out from being so profoundly rejected. Slowly, hesitantly, Samira reached out and touched his cheek. It was surprisingly warm, soft beneath her fingertips. The baby stirred at her touch, his eyelids fluttering open to reveal those strange glowing green eyes. They locked onto hers, an unnerving yet innocent gaze. A question, born of her deepest torment and nascent hope, escaped her lips. "Nadil," she whispered, "did Allah send you to punish me or to save me?" The baby responded with a soft gurgle, his tiny clawed hand reaching out to clutch her finger. A single tear, hot and heavy, slipped down Samira's cheek, marking the beginning of a profound internal shift. That very night, Samira performed the most basic act of motherhood. She fed him for the first time. Tears streamed down her face throughout the entire feeding. Tears not of sorrow but of an unburdening grief mixed with a fragile, burgeoning acceptance. When they finally returned home from the hospital, everything had fundamentally changed. Samira, once consumed by the need for outward appearances, now spent the majority of her days indoors, her world contracting to the confines of their home and the singular, extraordinary presence of her son. Nadil, meanwhile, thrived with astonishing speed, surpassing the developmental milestones of typical infants. By 2 months, he could effortlessly roll over and lift his chest with surprising strength. At 3 months, his method of locomotion was distinctly unusual. He did not crawl with arms and legs in the conventional manner, but rather slithered across the floor like a reptile, his elongated tail providing balance and support with an unnatural, almost precise control. The hushed murmurs began almost imperceptibly, then grew into a persistent undercurrent of unease. Neighbors started whispering whenever Samira passed, their glances laden with suspicion and veiled judgment. Sister Fatima, who lived just down the block, ceased inviting Samira to the regular halakas, the informal religious gatherings that had once been a cornerstone of her social life. One mother, seeing Samira pushing Nadil's stroller, deliberately crossed the street to avoid any proximity. Children less inhibited openly pointed, their innocent voices demanding to know, why does he have a tail? Some adults, bolder or perhaps crueler, articulated their unspoken fears aloud, declaring that Nadil was not a child, he was something else entirely. The elders of the mosque, respected figures in the community, convened privately. Their discussions, though veiled in discretion, ultimately led to a clear, unspoken directive. They did not formally expel Samira, understanding the potential for scandal, but the message was unequivocally conveyed. She and her family were to maintain a low profile, to remain quiet, to minimize their presence in public life. Jamal, despite the immense weight pressing down upon his family, strove to project an image of strength. He continued his work, diligently driving his delivery routes, and even managed to offer occasional jokes, attempting to lighten the oppressive atmosphere that had settled over their home. Yet Samira, with the keen intuition of a worried wife, saw the true burden in his eyes. The deep-seated anxiety, the profound loneliness of being the sole pillar, attempting to hold their fractured family upright against the relentless tide of communal disapproval. One afternoon, a startling sound emanated from Nadil's crib. He began making strange noises, guttural whispers that possessed an unsettling resemblance to words. A surge of both fear and desperate hope propelled Samira into the room. Nadil was staring intently at the wall, his tiny form seemingly captivated as he softly whispered, "Mama, Mama!" Samira gasped, her breath catching in her throat. It was not the incoherent babbling of an infant. The words were distinct, clear. Overwhelmed, she scooped him up, clutching him tightly to her chest. "I'm here," she murmured, tears stinging her eyes. "I'm so sorry, baby. Mama's here." Nadil looked up at her, his unusual eyes blinking slowly, and his scaled tail, an extension of his unique being, wrapped gently around her waist as if possessing its own independent emotion, a silent embrace. In that moment, the revulsion she had once felt, the fear of his appearance, melted away. She no longer cared what he looked like. He was hers undeniably, profoundly hers. But the fragile peace they had found within their home was not destined to last. One night, a decisive knock echoed through their quiet dwelling. Jamal opened the door to find two prominent community leaders standing on their porch, their expressions taut with a grim resolve. They stated their purpose, declaring they had come to speak on behalf of several families within the community. Samira, sensing the ominous tone, appeared from behind her husband, clutching Nadil protectively in her arms. One of the men, his voice strained, spoke of discomfort and fear circulating among the sisters, who claimed their children were plagued by nightmares. They believed the baby, Samira's son, was the unsettling cause. The other leader, attempting a gentler approach, clarified that they were not demanding their departure, but suggested a temporary change of scenery, a retreat to a quieter town somewhere Nadil could be raised away from the unsettling scrutiny. Samira remained silent, her heart aching with the injustice of it all. Jamal's jaw clenched, a muscle working beneath his skin. He finally acknowledged their request, offering a clipped thank you before closing the door with a quiet, definitive thud. That night, a profound shift occurred within Samira. She sat beside Nadil's crib, gazing at his sleeping form, and began to whisper words she had once feared to even think. Words of raw, desperate acceptance. "I won't run again," she vowed, her voice trembling but resolute. "I won't throw away what Allah gave me." As if sensing her turmoil, Nadil stirred. He reached out a tiny scaled hand and gently placed it over her lips, silencing her self-recrimination. His green eyes, usually so unnerving, glowed softly, not with malevolence but with an ancient, profound mercy. In that poignant instant, a revelatory truth washed over Samira. This child, her extraordinary son, had not been born to punish her. He had been sent to awaken her, to guide her towards a redemption she had long believed unreachable. 3 days after the unsettling visit from the community leaders, Jamal made a quiet, resolute decision. He packed a few essential bags, loaded them into his weathered old van, and informed Samira of their imminent departure. Their destination was his cousin's place in rural New Mexico, a small, isolated town, blessedly devoid of a mosque, of judgment, offering only the vast, silent expanse of the desert. Samira, her spirit weary but strangely calm, simply nodded without a word. She had nothing left to defend. The eyes that had once met hers with warmth during Juma prayers now stared back with palpable fear. She could no longer bear to walk past the mosque's bulletin board, where someone had anonymously scrawled a chilling directive: keep the jinn baby at home. They departed early on a Sunday morning, well before the Fajr call to prayer, hoping to slip away unnoticed. Jamal drove steadily through the pre-dawn mist, the landscape slowly shifting from urban sprawl to open desert. Samira sat in the back seat, gently rocking Nadil. The baby was unusually quiet, his luminous green eyes fixed intently on the sky visible through the window, his unique tail twitching slowly, peacefully, as if content with their new, uncertain journey. The house in New Mexico was small, a rustic, cabin-style wooden structure nestled near a remote desert canyon, surrounded by the stark beauty of cacti and an encompassing silence. She whispered, "Do you remember them? The ones I... the ones I lost?" Nadal offered no verbal response. He simply looked toward the sun-baked rocks, then slowly reached out a tiny scaled hand and gently touched her cheek. That night, Samira experienced another profound dream. She stood once again at the edge of that very canyon, but this time the desert was perfectly still, like an enormous, glass-smooth expanse. From beneath the surface, 5 small figures ascended, children radiant with light, their faces aglow with smiles. They were not angry, nor were they empty specters as before. One of them stepped forward, its voice a gentle echo. "We forgive you, Mama. Nadil came to save you." When Samira awoke, her face was wet with tears, yet her heart felt lighter than it had in years. Nadil lay peacefully beside her, one small clawed hand resting gently over her heart, a living testament to a new, unspoken grace. The next morning, Samira herself underwent a noticeable transformation. She no longer averted her gaze from mirrors. She no longer flinched or tensed when Nadil made his odd sounds or moved in unexpected ways. She began to recite Quran with him nestled beside her, sometimes hearing his soft baby hums attempting to follow her voice, a melody of nascent faith. She meticulously cleaned their cabin from top to bottom, cooked warm, nourishing meals, and prayed every salah precisely on time, not out of a lingering fear of divine punishment, but because her heart now genuinely yearned for Allah's closeness. Her heart had finally ceased fearing Nadil, and perhaps more importantly, she had stopped fearing herself. One day as she was folding laundry, she heard a distinct patter of tiny, confident footsteps. She turned to find Nadil standing steadily, watching her with an unnerving intensity. "Mama," he said, his voice soft yet undeniably clear, utterly certain. It was not the first time he had uttered the word, but this time it was different. His eyes did not just look at her, they looked into her, into the very core of her being. Samira dropped the laundry, overcome with emotion, and embraced him tightly. "You're not my punishment," she whispered, tears mingling with her words. "You're my hope." From that day forward, she ceased hiding him. Every afternoon, she and Jamal took Nadil for walks near the desert, venturing closer to hiking trails. If they passed other hikers, they simply smiled and continued their path, shedding the burden of shame and fear. And then, something truly extraordinary began to occur. Birds, usually skittish, started to follow them, fluttering around their heads. Wild animals, typically shy and elusive, lingered nearby without fear. Deer would pause in clearings, observing them with curious eyes, and even rabbits, usually quick to flee, remained unafraid. It was as if creation itself recognized Nadil as something beyond human, yet distinctly not cursed. Jamal, observing these phenomena, once mused, "He was born from your worst sins, but maybe he's here to carry them into the light." One night, Samira found Nadal sitting by the open window, his tail swaying gently, his gaze fixed on the endless expanse of stars. She sat beside him. He looked up at her, his little voice soft with a profound question. Mama, why did Allah make me like this? Her throat tightened. She had anticipated this question for months, yet hearing it still shattered her heart. Because sometimes Allah uses strange shapes to deliver beautiful mercy, she replied, her voice filled with newfound conviction. Nadil blinked, his reptilian eyes clear. So I'm not bad? She shook her head, smiling through her tears. You're not bad, my love. You are chosen. He leaned his head against her arm and whispered, Then I want to make you proud, Mama. You already do, she assured him. They sat in silence, mother and son, enveloped by the desert wind and the infinite starlight. Samira knew the world might never truly understand Nadil, but Allah did, and for her that was enough. Nadil celebrated his first birthday in the quiet solitude of the New Mexico desert, far removed from the judgmental eyes of their old community. Samira baked him a small honey cake, decorating it simply with pistachios arranged in the shape of a crescent moon. Jamal, with loving care, carved a wooden toy truck, etching Nadil's name in elegant Arabic script along its side. It was the first birthday Samira had ever truly celebrated for any of her children, and the first time she felt genuinely deserving of such a moment of joy. That evening, they sat together by the canyon's edge, the sky ablaze with hues of pink and orange. Nadil clapped his tiny clawed hands with pure delight as the single candle on his cake flickered in the gentle breeze. Samira held him close in her lap and whispered, Bismillah, before cutting a small slice. There were no guests, no festive noise, just the vastness of nature, the whisper of the wind, and a profound sense of peace that enveloped them like a warm, comforting blanket. But true, unblemished peace did not last forever. The whispers from Phoenix, they discovered, had spread much farther than they had ever imagined. A distant relative from their former community, someone once close to Jamal, posted vague accusations on social media. A child born with a tail, the post read, a punishment for sin, or something far worse. May Allah protect us from hidden deviance. Photos, distorted and out of context, began to circulate, rumors spreading like wildfire. Before long, local gossip blogs picked up the sensationalized story. The lizard baby of Phoenix, one headline blared. Another brazenly labeled Nadil the harem child. Samira wept in utter frustration. She had painstakingly constructed a sanctuary in the wilderness, a safe haven for her family. Yet the world, with its relentless curiosity and prejudice, had reached its grasping hands into their refuge anyway. Jamal was furious, his face tight with indignation. He lamented that, they never asked, they never saw his heart. They don't care, Samira whispered, resigned. They only see the tail. Soon after, a county child services officer arrived at their remote door. A complaint had been filed, an anonymous tip concerning a child in danger, citing possible neglect or abnormality. The word abnormality sliced through Samira's chest like a sharp blade. Nadil was in the living room, humming softly to himself as he carefully stacked blocks into the shape of a crescent moon. When he saw the woman at the door, he smiled brightly, an innocent, welcoming gesture, and offered his customary "Assalamu alaikum." The officer flinched almost imperceptibly, surprised by the child's articulate greeting, but quickly composed herself, offering a polite, "Hello, sweetie," in return. Samira, her heart pounding against her ribs, invited the officer inside. The interview stretched for hours. They meticulously checked Nadil's health records, his growth charts, his speech development. The officer's brow furrowed slightly at the sight of his tail and scaled feet, a clear sign of her professional assessment. Yet when she posed simple questions to Nadil, he answered clearly, kindly, and with a surprising emotional awareness that disarmed her. At the end of her visit, she rose and looked directly at Samira. He's different, she conceded, but he's not unsafe. He's intelligent. He's loved. That's more than I can say for many children I visit. Then she departed, and remarkably, she never returned. That night, Samira sat with Nadil beneath the brilliant desert stars. Mama, he asked, his voice tinged with a child's innocent confusion, why do people think I'm scary? She took a deep, fortifying breath. Because they don't know Allah the way you do, she explained. They think difference means danger, but Allah creates everything with wisdom. Not a look down at his unique feet, a moment of profound vulnerability. Am I a mistake? Samira gently cupped his face in her hands, her gaze unwavering. Never. You are not a mistake. You are my dua. You are my chance at redemption. Nadil pressed his small head into her chest, a silent embrace. I love you, Mama. I love you more, Nadil, she whispered. As the seasons turned, Nadil continued to grow, not just physically but in spirit. By age 3, he could recite short surahs from memory, his unusual voice carrying the sacred words with an innocent reverence. He asked profound questions about Jannah, about Allah's boundless mercy, and about the perplexing human tendency to fear what they did not understand. One day, a small group of Muslim families from a neighboring town visited them, having heard fragments of Nadil's story. But this time, they came with kindness, not cruelty. One mother sat beside Samira, tears streaming down her face. My son has autism, she confided. The mosque pushed us away too. They don't know what to do with children like ours. Another father, his voice filled with genuine wonder, admitted, we heard your boy was different. We didn't expect him to be beautiful. Samira was stunned, her heart swelling with an emotion she hadn't dared to hope for. And so, a new kind of community began to form around them. One built not on the rigid adherence to outward perfection, but on the boundless, unifying power of compassion. They prayed together, shared meals, and allowed their children to play together without fear or judgment. Samira, now confident and open, led Quran recitation circles for the mothers. Nadil, for the first time in his young life, made true friends. The deep ache of her past did not entirely disappear. The raw memories of the 5 lives she had once abandoned still resided within her heart. But now, they were no longer haunting ghosts. They were miraculously forgiven. Allah, in his infinite wisdom and mercy, had granted her a living reminder of both divine justice and profound compassion, all embodied in one miraculous child. One night, just before Maghrib prayer, Nadil sat beside her as the orange sun dipped behind the rugged desert rocks. Mama, he said softly, his voice carrying the wisdom of a soul far older than his years. Will Allah forgive all of your mistakes? Samira smiled, a pure, unburdened joy blossoming in her heart. She leaned down, kissing his forehead. He already has, she whispered, because he gave me you. As the adhan echoed from the speaker Jamal had installed near their porch, Samira raised her hands in heartfelt dua. Tears traced paths down her cheeks, but they were not tears of guilt or remorse. They were tears of profound gratitude. For once, she had believed she had buried her sins at the edge of the vast, unforgiving desert. But Allah, in his boundless mercy, had returned them to her, not to punish, but to allow her to hold them close, to nurture them with love, and to be reborn through their extraordinary presence. And in Nadil's unique embrace, she finally found an enduring peace that transcended all earthly understanding.